So how did we get from 3-weight champion absolutely dominating everybody that came in his path to crypto scams and constantly being sick, not allowed into the US, can only fight over here, missing weight, dropping out of numerous different fights? It all has become a shit show for Khamzat Chimaev. With the crypto scam, I saw it the other day. I wasn't really pushed about it because, to be fair, guys that come out with this crypto stuff and people that buy into it, it is what it is. If you're a fan of Khamzat and you want to spend your money on some weird crypto, grand, but like if you get caught and all your money gets rocked, then look, it is what it is. It's like these emails that come to you constantly about princes in Nigeria need you to build a well or something like that. No interest in it. But what it made me do is go back and look at Khamzat's career so far and all the ups and downs, and you start piling them all together and you're kind of there asking questions like, how the f is this guy such a huge star? Why are the UFC constantly backing him? And is it time for them to cut ties with this dude? And obviously the question then arises about how he was super hyped by everybody. We were all expecting so much from him. How the potential was right there to be a world beater, to be a Hall of Famer. And is any of that going to happen now? I doubt it. I'm going to try look at some ulterior reasons why he might be not willing to fight, why he's constantly sick, why he keeps backing out of every bout that gets put in front of him. You know what? There's a little bit of sense to be made there in terms of the company he keeps. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at some of the stuff from his past, which is, again, nefarious and a little bit dodgy, and you're kind of like, okay, so the writing was on the wall from the very beginning with Khamzat Chimaev. We should have seen it, but again, we had the blinkers on him. We wanted him to be this badass who was going to run through 3 divisions. Remember when Brendan Schaub and Michael Bisping were banging on about him as if he was the second coming?
Can Khamzat Chimaev become the UFC's first ever 3-weight division champion?
Oh yeah, no, you know what, no.
And he was going to dominate everybody. When I look back at that stuff, I'm kind of like, okay, how come all the stories were out there and we missed them? And I'm going to go through a couple of them stories today. Before I do, if you could hit like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. I've been out of action for the last week or two. Bouts of sickness, funerals, all that sort of stuff. But I'm back and we're going to try to get the show on the road. Cheers. I don't even know where to start. I'm not even going to cover the crypto stuff. Let's have a little look at this one, right? How UFC star was banned from entering the United States of America. Khamzat Chimaev was supposed to headline UFC 300. However, the Chechen fighter was unable to enter the US due to his connections with warlord Ramzan Kadyrov. There we see him. He's hanging out with the guy himself. This is something that you'll see numerous of video essays talking about Khamzat Chimaev relating to the warlord Ramzan Kadyrov. There is a relationship there. I don't know whether it's a two-sided relationship or a one-sided relationship. In terms of, if we think about Khamzat, how he initially came into the UFC, he was this Chechen Muslim lad from Sweden, right? And as the backstories went, he was fleeing Chechnya. So in theory, he was fleeing this warlord who seems to be kind of controlling him now. So he was fleeing Chechnya, right? He bounced over to Sweden like all the other economic migrants or refugees or whatever you want to call them. He bounced over there for a better life. He talks about it in a couple of different interviews where his brother had surgery for free and got his like ailments fixed by some foreign government. So they reached out to Khamzat and his mother and said, listen, you better come over here. It's awesome. And look, that's the story of everybody's town, village and city right now across Europe. It's absolutely shocking. Huge difference between economic migrants and refugees, and to be honest with you, both of them should be stopped at the border and sent back. Off you go, do your own thing. So there you have Khamzat bounces over to Sweden, and we had that kind of him walking out with the Swedish flag, and I was kind of thinking, you know, as opposed to Israel Adesanya, who bounced over to New Zealand, became a New Zealander, and then after training there for years and whatever subsidies he had to train there and whatever New Zealand offered him as a fighter, professional fighter, I know he has a dodgy relationship with them, but as soon as he became famous, he went and put up the Nigerian flag. That's kind of what the lads do. They don't care about the countries that house them, that feed them, that give them refuge. They really don't care. They don't see themselves as Swedish or New Zealanders or Irish or English or whatever it is. You know, you see it all the time over in Britain. Hundreds of thousands of Muslim lads out in the streets of London, and they're being asked by interviewers whether you're British or not, and they're laughing at the idea of being British. They don't care, but it is what it is. That's a story for another day. So I thought it was cool that Khamzat was going around and he had the Swedish flag. But what we don't know is that whilst he was over there, like like so many of these immigrants, he couldn't keep his nose clean. The dude was taking part in robberies where he would help his buddies in a store robbing headphones. When they were accosted by the security guard and apprehended, Khamzat would actually run in there, punch the guy in the face and get arrested. This is a story that I don't think that many people know. I pulled it up over here. Khamzat Chimaev was convicted of assault in 2018. He punched a store employee in the face. Khamzat Chimaev punched a store employee in the face a month after his professional debut, and the Swedish MMA star was sentenced for assault. The penalty was a suspended sentence with community service. Okay. Interesting. Very hard story to find, let me tell you, because when we hear stories of visa troubles that he has had, when we hear stories that he had to bounce over to United Arab Emirates, this is coming from his jiu-jitsu coach saying that he just couldn't become a citizen of Sweden and get that visa to come and work in America. So we actually just absconded again to the next country that will give us refuge, and that was United Arab Emirates. And now he's a citizen over there and we're working on getting visas. This is straight from his coach's mouth. That's what the story was there. But when we hear the stories of he couldn't get citizenship, it's because he was convicted of a crime. He couldn't keep his nose clean when he was over there either. You accompanied these early stories of Khamzat Chimaev with the stuff that he was doing in the UFC. Remember when he missed weight by 8 pounds and then flipped us all the bird and told us to get fucked? And then we all forgot about it a day later and watched him go in there and ragdoll Kevin Holland? Do you remember that? A Kalmar District Court judgment in 2018 from the time Khamzat Chimaev was a promising 24-year-old who had just won his MMA professional debut against Gerard Ove Sagan. In October 2017, Khamzat's friend was stopped by an employee inside a department store in Kalmar. The staff suspected that his friend was in the process of stealing a pair of headphones, and after protests put him on the ground. Chimaev hurried in there, according to the verdict. The martial artist punched the store employee in the face, causing him to fall over and hit his leg on a shelf. According to the indictment, he's said to have suffered wounds to his mouth, a sore jaw, and an injury to his leg. Khamzat said that he was operating in self-defense. The district court considered this. This was disproven by several testimonies and a photo of the slap. Interesting. Through what thus had emerged, the district court found that the situation that arose, there was no right for emergency protection, which is why Khamzat cannot escape liability for the assault, which cannot be assessed as a minor. The judgment read, penalty conditional sentence of community service for 50 hours as well as damages of 600 Swedish dollars, whatever that is. So there we have the backstory of all these articles that talk about why he can't enter the US. He can't enter the US because he has a criminal record in Sweden after they gave him refuge for years and years and years and paid for surgeries, paid for his training, paid for his education, the usual. And what did he do? Got himself into trouble, and it affected him going forward in terms of his visas, trying to get into the US and fight over there. And whilst I was looking through all the dodginess that he's been involved in over the years, I came across this story. I remember hearing this story, and it was blasted everywhere on the MMA community, and especially from shills that thought it was some sort of win. When Khamzat Chimaev was arrested after he flew to Ireland to beat up Conor McGregor for insulting Khabib Nurmagomedov. Interesting. Very interesting story. Completely fake. 100% fake. When you go through what he actually says, he flew to Ireland and he was pretending to be part of a wrestling team that was going there to help Conor McGregor compete against Khabib Nurmagomedov. He was stopped in the airport for 8 hours. And why? Why was he stopped? Was it because he had a criminal record coming from Sweden as an economic migrant / refugee rat? Was that possibly the case, that he got stopped for 8 hours and questioned? So as his story goes, after he was released from the airport police, he decided to walk out of the airport and go and beat up Conor McGregor or some garbage like that. As he was walking out of the airport, he gets arrested by armed response SWAT teams. There's not really anything like that in Ireland. There's a couple of lads like with a pair of combat pants, like not really SWAT team-ish, to be honest with you. Why did they come up and stop him? Did they get word that he was going after Conor McGregor? No, it's all fake rubbish. More than likely the story went is that he was a criminal and he was a migrant and he didn't respect the country that gave him refuge, and this showed because of the behavior and the charges that were held against him, and it shows up on your passport. That's the way it worked. And then concocted this huge story about, I went there to fight Conor McGregor and got arrested by SWAT teams. Fake. Garbage. Had to pull it up because it was another little note where if you scratch the surface, there's a bigger story underneath. So after he started gaining all this success and all the news stories started following him and he had all these win streaks and he was going to be the 3-weight champion, after all that, the relationship between Kadyrov started to grow tighter. We see him wrestling with the kids. We see him coaching these kids. We see him rolling jiu-jitsu with Kadyrov, getting fake choked out, all this type of stuff. We know that Kadyrov has bought him 3 sports cars. So there's money been invested here. And you're kind of thinking, okay, that's very interesting, because the last time Kadyrov did this with a MMA star that he was mad about and that he wanted to succeed and wanted to take under his wing, the dude had one fight in the UFC, then decided that he was going to quit the UFC. He was going to quit his dream of being an MMA fighter, and he was going to work for Kadyrov as part of the regime, and he was his right hand man and he had a position very high up in the government, and then suddenly he passed away randomly, suspiciously, nobody knew why, after a falling out with Kadyrov. Apparently. That's enough to strike fear into the heart of the regular schmo reading this article or watching this video. Imagine you're this dude's favorite fighter. Imagine this dude just gave you 3 cars. Imagine this dude is funding you and propping you up and you're part of the family almost, hanging out with his kids. Imagine the fear you would have of a fallout that would almost induce some sort of sickness in somebody. You know, you'd be sick with worry. You'd get COVID and you couldn't get rid of it. It would last for months. You'd get weird rashes. You get food poisoning because you're constantly maybe on edge. Maybe there's tension building up there. Maybe you're terrified to lose. Maybe you're terrified to upset your new buddy. I'm just saying that that's not a bad reason to why Khamzat is constantly sick. I think that that's an interesting one. And there's so many other stories that you can find with a little bit of research, a little bit of Googling. You remember the time that he had beef with Khabib and his team, and there was a full-blown physical altercation backstage? And then suddenly the next day, almost like a hostage video, we had Khabib and his team and Khamzat Chimaev, and they were all just kind of like standing around awkwardly saying to camera that everything was sorted. And then when you do a little bit of research, you realize that Kadyrov and Putin were in the background telling the boys, listen, this is a bad look for our favorite fighters. Get it together and get out there. So you just have to understand the power that is being wielded by someone behind the scenes. And a little bit of digging will answer a lot of questions for you in terms of the potential that could have been with Khamzat Chimaev, the 3-weight champion, to what we have now, a crypto scammer, constantly missing weight, pulling out of 4, 5, 6 fights. We see him in the octagon and he fights Gilbert Burns, and we see him fighting Kamaru Usman, and he doesn't look invincible. He looks normal. He looks like them 2 boys beat him. And you're kind of thinking, how does he explain that to Kadyrov? Because maybe Kadyrov bought into the potential and the hype that we all bought into for the 3-weight champion. He's going to beat everybody. Kadyrov is thinking this is going to be a great representation for our country. It's going to put us on the map. And all of a sudden, there's lackluster performances in the octagon. All of a sudden, Khamzat is getting worried about that. He's getting sick. He's getting rash. He's getting food poisoning. And every time there's a big fight coming up that we all go, this is going to be a tough fight for him. You know, he's going to be fighting Robert Whittaker. He's going to be fighting Paulo Costa. These are going to be tough fights. If we're thinking that they're going to be tough fights, he's thinking they're going to be tough fights. And he's thinking, I don't want to lose them fights. You know what I mean? I don't want to upset anybody. These are all just speculative theories, but I found it very interesting in a week where people were going after him for, is he a crypto scammer? Is he not a crypto scammer? Doesn't really matter. I think the real scam is the fact that he sold us and the UFC sold us on an idea that this guy was going to be a huge, unbeatable star. And it never came to fruition. Little bit of a jumbled up video. Let me know if any of it made sense. And if it did, maybe hit like, subscribe, and share. I appreciate you. Cheers.